So tonight I decided I'm going to make my favorite meal, well, one of my very favorite meals, and it's also one of my brother Randall's favorite meals, chicken and dumplings. This is the way that I think my mother did it, but it's the way that I do it now. I typically just buy a whole chicken and I boil it. Back in the day, before, the boxed chicken broths, I would put the chicken in a big old pot like I have back here. And I would I'm putting in 3 onions, and I'm not cutting them small because I'm making a stock with what I'm going to use in the chicken and dumplings. Now, you can put in what you like in your chicken and dumplings. My cat is being very curious over here with the camera. Carl, get down. Don't be an asshole. He likes being an asshole. Anyway, so when you're cutting up your vegetables for the initial stock, you're just going to cut them up into big chunks. Cut it in half, cut it in thirds, and I'm going to go shoo my cat. Carl, go eat your dinner. That's what happens when you have a Sphinx. Sphinx cats are very curious and they want to know what's going on. They want to be a part of everything. And I tried to get Carl in almost every single one of my videos, whether I want to or not. The last video I made, he knocked down my camera, so I'm paying attention to what he's doing back there. Right now he's eating. So I've got just a bunch of stalks of celery. I should have bought more celery because I do like celery. And what I did was I saved a little bit for once the stock is done. I'm going to strain all this stuff, and then I'm going to put it back in the big pot, and I'm going to bring it to a boil while the chicken that I boiled up cools, and then I'll debone the chicken, add that to a whole fresh stock. So we've got 3 onions chopped relatively large, just in half and then in thirds. And then I've got 3 cloves of garlic. That's a matter of preference. If you like garlic, which I do, then you put in as much garlic as you want. I mean, it never has an overpowering garlic taste. Again, it's a stock, so I'm just going to crush it. And I've got my garbage bowl right here, so for my skins and whatnot. So, whoop, that one wanted to go for a ride. It really took off like a shot. Take your skins off, pile them in your pile of vegetables. I'm used to getting that last head of garlic that I had huge cloves, so I had to really pound it. But these aren't so big, so I don't have to pound it so hard to just kind of crush it. So there you are. I've got my pile of vegetables. There's no color in here. You can put carrots in. I don't like carrots, so I'm not going to put them in. I've got my whole chicken, and I think it's, I don't know. I have to find out how many pound chicken. I'll let you know how many pounds it is, but it's just, one that you find in your meat department, wrapped up. Pick the size that you want, and you can use as much meat as you want off the bone. If you want to reserve some for something else, by all means, do that. But I'm going to take this whole big chicken, and I rinsed it when I got it home. I took it out of the package. I took the neck out and the little giblets. I'm going to boil it all up. I'm going to put it in the pan, and I'm going to boil the entire chicken in that. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to essentially cover it and about an inch or 2 above it with broth and water if you want, because there's going to be plenty of flavor that's going to be brought from that chicken. So I'm just going to go wash my hands, because whenever you handle chicken, wherever you should have a separate cutting board for chicken. You should always wash your hands in between. You don't want any cross-contamination. I didn't put this chicken on my cutting board. I never do. I usually have a different one for chicken. But in between, always, 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 always wash your hands when it comes to chicken. Hands are nice and clean, so now I can handle the other vegetables and whatnot before I put everything in the pot. So we've got the chicken in the big old stock pot. I'm adding my onion and garlic and celery, and if you like carrots, chop up some carrots, throw those in for your stock. I'm not going to do that because I don't like carrot. take your salt. I'm going to salt, you know, a nice good pinch of salt. And then, again, you can use, depending on what aromatics you put in there, if you want to put celery in there, a bunch of celery for a flavor of celery, I mean not celery, parsley, by all means do that. I have some leftover bone broth from the recipe that I made the other night, so I'm going to use that up because I don't like good things like this going to waste. Now the thing about bone broth, because it's made with, essentially they get the collagen from the bone, so when you put it in the refrigerator, it gets a little gelatinous because it's got some really good protein and really good stuff in the bone broth. So I've got that, and I've got a box of chicken broth, and I've got some extra water as well. So I'm going to pour that over my chicken. If you have more broth, you know, just make it all broth. I'm going to do a combination of broth and water. So, and these boxes, they're about 4 cups. So there's about 4 cups in each box. There was probably about 3 cups left in here. So 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I don't know how much water. This is going to be just enough to cover the chicken. And I've got probably about an inch over the chicken. The chicken is at the bottom of the pan. And I'm going to turn on my burner. And we're going to let that come to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, we're going to let it simmer for as long as it takes. And I'll keep track of it for you because I just I know when it's done. You know, when the meat starts to get really tender, I usually take a fork and test it. And if it's opaque all the way through and it's, you know, really tender and falling away, breaking apart, it's done. I'm going to time it because I don't really keep track of how long it takes. So when we come back, I'll let you know how long it took. Right now, it's about 4:15. So when it's done, I'll let you know. I'll remember to. Okay, so we've got the chicken in there, and we've got a nice little boil. I turned the heat on, or the flame on, at about 4:15. It's about 5 o'clock, and it's still boiling. The legs are starting to come away from the chicken, which is okay. So I moved my camera a little bit so you can watch me cut. Usually what I do, because I want relatively small pieces, I'm going to cut. Usually I leave the root on, but I wasn't thinking when I was cutting this onion. You leave the root on, you cut flat of your hand, and you cut this way, and then you just do nice little chops down this way. Hold it together with your fingers, and you'll have nice little dices of onion. And if it gets to the end, you just chop. And if you want them even smaller, chop them up a little bit more. I've still got some skin on my cutting board. I don't want that. And I've got a less than desirable part of the onion that I don't want in my. So we're going to do this. I'm going to chop that end off because it looks dirty. You don't want it. So I'm going to cut that down. It's only 1 onion. I'm going to just, because we used 3 onions when we were making the broth, and the 3 onions gave the broth a lot of flavor. I'm just adding some fresh onions to it because that's the way I like it. If you don't want any more onions, your kitchen, your rules, my kitchen, my rules. I like more onion in my broth. So we've got, I don't know, probably a little 1.5 cups. And then I've got the rest of the celery. I'm going to just bunch that up and just chop that. I'm going to put that into the soup as well because I love celery. And you make your chicken pot pie the way, or chicken and dumplings the way you like it. I'm going to chop those up nice and not too thick. I'm not going to put any more garlic into the broth. It doesn't need garlic. I mean, this is not a really garlicky dish. It was nice to put in when you were boiling the chicken to give it some flavor. So I'm just going to add my celery and my onions. To my broth. Let that come back up to a simmer. while your chicken is cooling. Let that come up to a simmer. And then what we'll do is we'll debone the chicken. We'll just break it apart, put it in the sauce, and let that come up to a simmer. And then we'll be doing our dumplings, which is really quick. It's 10 minutes covered, 10 minutes uncovered, and then voila, you have chicken and dumplings. And the chicken is still cooling, so I figured while the chicken is still cooling, I would make the dumpling recipe. Now, like I said, I use Bisquick. They don't have their dumpling recipe on their box anymore, which I think is tragic. I guess not a lot of people must make dumplings, but I know the recipe. You do 2 cups, and you know, I say I know the recipe. I'll follow the recipe, and then I'll look to see the consistency of the dumpling mix. If it's kind of like a sticky, it's a little bit wet, but not too wet. It's a little bit dry, but not too dry. So it's a different kind of consistency. So we've got 2 cups of Bisquick and 2/3 of a cup of milk. Now, I don't know about you dairy-free people, whether almond milk, oat milk, or coconut milk, whether that would be any good. I'm not taking that chance. So 2/3 of a cup of milk. We'll see how that looks when we mix it up. And that's all it is with Bisquick, because Bisquick has all the other ingredients in it. So you don't have to add baking soda or powder or whatever else that might be called for in a baking thing. So we're going to mix this up. I decided I think I might start a drinking game on these videos. Every time I say so, I made myself a cocktail. You have to drink. That could be dangerous. All right, so we're mixing this up. And it can sit, that's the thing. See that to me looks to be a little too wet. So I'm gonna add a little bit of Bisquick. Probably I added another tablespoon, because it should like pull apart. There we go, there we go. See how it's pulling apart from the side? That's more like it. You don't want it too wet, but you don't want it too dry. So it's pulling apart from the bowl. You can see, I wish my lighting wasn't, the lighting's kind of bad, so you can't really see it, but you'll be able to tell. And you can just let that hang out while your chicken is still cooling. Takes a while for the chicken to cool. I'm almost ready. What I did was I pulled apart the big pieces away from the bone. So it's because the closer to the bone you got, the hotter it got. So let that cool down a little bit. I actually think it might be ready. I'm going to try to get a close-up view of the meat being put in there. I don't think you need to see that. You break apart the meat in the little bite-sized pieces with your hands. You know, it's very rustic. And you continue to let it simmer. And when it's time for the dumplings, I'll show you the dumplings. And hopefully I'll be able to get a close enough view where you can see what it looks like when you first dump them in. You put the lid on for 10 minutes. I'll set the timer, take the lid off, let it cook for another 10 minutes, and then you've got chicken and dumplings. We'll see how it goes. It's always an adventure in this kitchen. Okay, so we did a little time-lapse video of me deboning the chicken and putting it into the broth. So right now, if you can tell, it's just a nice gentle simmer, and we're ready for the dumplings. So I've got 2 spoons, just so I can save my fingers, and you scoop out, and like I said, my mother used to make them big. And I have to tell you, when it came to deboning a chicken, my mother could find meat on chicken. She had 4 hungry kids to feed, and we were poor. So that chicken had to go a long way, and there was not a lick of meat on that chicken after she got done with it. All right, so we're just, I mean, you don't have to be fancy. And just grab a spoonful of dumpling, dump it in. If it starts to stick to the spoon too much, just dip your spoon in. Find all the little spaces where the broth is. And just pop them in. I used to always wish my mother made more dumplings, but you can only fit so many dumplings into the pot. I mean, I love the chicken, but the dumplings were the treat. She wasn't one to make chicken pot pie, but she would make us chicken and dumplings. And it became for the longest time, it was my favorite meal. Now what's going to happen is these dumplings are going to expand. If you got some extra ones in there, you can just add. And the broth is going to thicken because of the dumplings. We're going to set my timer for 10 minutes. We're going to cover. I'm going to turn it down just a tad because we don't want it overflowing. We want a nice gentle simmer. It's going to cook for 10 minutes. We're going to come back in 10 minutes and we're going to cook uncovered for 10 minutes. Timer's going off. I'm turning off my timer. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. It seems like it's going a little bit too robustly. So now I've taken it off. You see the nice fluffy dumplings. So now it's going to cook for another 10 minutes uncovered, but I'm going to turn down the heat, slow that simmer down so that it's nice and gentle. Hear it? Could be even gentler, so we'll go even lower. There we go. Nice gentle simmer. So I'm going to set my timer for another 10 minutes. And when I see you again, it'll be in a bowl and I will give you a picture of it and it will be lovely.